and welcome back to LexiMind, the channel where knowledge meets language learning. If you're new here, we take some of the most powerful books in the world, break them down for you, and at the same time, we help you level up your English. Hey, this is Lucas.
That's right, I'm Mary, and today we have a really special episode. We're diving into one of the most talked about books on personal finance ever written, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
Yeah, and honestly, Mary, this book is not your typical finance book. It doesn't give you stock tips or tell you how to get rich quick.
Exactly. It goes deeper than that. It asks, why do we make the financial decisions we make? And the answer has a lot more to do with psychology than with math. So whether you're a total beginner with money or someone who's been investing for years, this episode has something for you. And prepare yourself to learn useful English words and expressions naturally. Pay attention when they come up because at the end, we'll break each one down for you properly. Let's get into it.
The book opens with a powerful idea. Housel says that no matter how crazy someone's financial decisions look to you, they almost always make complete sense to that person based on their own experiences. And honestly, when you think about how new modern finance really is, we're all basically winging it. So you basically don't prepare or plan, but just rely on your instinct.
Right. The 401k didn't exist until 1978. The Roth IRA wasn't born until 1998. Index funds are less than 50 years old. We have no ancestral wisdom to draw on here. And that explains so much about why people make such different financial choices.
He gives this great example. If you were born in 1970, the stock market grew almost tenfold during your teens and 20s. Of course, you'd feel confident about investing in stocks. But if you were born in 1950, the market went nowhere during those same years of your life. You'd be far more skeptical.
And neither person is wrong. They're just shaped by completely different experiences. Same with lottery tickets. A lot of people look at low-income families spending hundreds of dollars a year on lotto tickets and say, that's irresponsible. But Housel says, for someone with no other realistic path to wealth, that ticket is buying a dream. And that dream has real value to them.
So before we judge anyone's financial choices, including our own, we should remember that decisions are rarely made with a spreadsheet. They're made at the dinner table, shaped by ego, pride, and personal history. We're all navigating this as best we can.
Yeah. Now moving to chapter 2 is one of my favorites. It's about luck and risk and the uncomfortable truth that success is never purely the result of individual effort.
Housel uses Bill Gates as the example. In 1968, Gates attended one of the only high schools in the world that had a computer. The odds of that? About 1 in a million. Gates himself admitted, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft.
But here's the heartbreaking flip side. Gates's best friend, Kent Evans, was equally talented and equally passionate. But he died in a mountaineering accident before graduating high school. Also, roughly a 1 in a million chance. Same probability, completely opposite outcomes. One got extraordinary luck. The other got devastating risk.
And what this shows us is that we need to be humble about success and compassionate about failure, because so much of what happens to us is outside our control. We tend to judge other people's failures as bad decisions, but our own failures as bad luck. Housel says we need to flip that thinking. His practical advice? Don't try to copy extreme success stories, because those might be extreme luck stories. Look for broad patterns that repeat across many successful people. Those are the lessons you can actually apply. And arrange your finances so that no single bad event can wipe you out, because risk is real, and even the best decisions sometimes run into terrible luck. Chapter 3 hits really hard. It's about the concept of enough. Housel opens it with this story. Kurt Vonnegut tells his friend Joseph Heller that the billionaire hosting their party makes more in a single day than Heller's novel Catch-22 made in its entire lifetime. And Heller just smiles and says, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough.
Oh, that story gets me every time.
And then Housel gives 2 tragic examples. Rajat Gupta, a man who rose from being an orphan in Calcutta to becoming the CEO of McKinsey and a Goldman Sachs board member worth $100 million. He had an insatiable appetite for more. That hunger, that inability to ever feel satisfied led him to insider trading, prison, and a completely destroyed reputation.
And Bernie Madoff, before his infamous Ponzi scheme, he had a legitimate business earning up to $50 million a year. He threw it all away because he never developed a sense of enough. Buffett put it perfectly. They risked what they had and needed to get what they didn't have and didn't need.
And the engine behind all of this? Moving the goalposts. The rules, standards, or requirements always change after they've already been met. And the hardest financial skill, Housel says, is getting the goalposts to stop moving. Because if your expectations rise every time your income rises, you'll never feel satisfied. You'll always be chasing something just out of reach.
Social comparison makes it worse. The ceiling of comparison is so high that virtually nobody ever reaches it. Comparing yourself to hedge fund managers or Jeff Bezos is a game that simply cannot be won. The only way to win is to refuse to play.
And some things should simply never be put at risk, no matter the potential reward. Your reputation, your freedom, your family, your peace of mind. Once those are gone, no amount of money brings them back. So Chapter 4 is genuinely mind-blowing. It's about compounding, which means your interest not only on your original money, but also on the interest you've already earned. For example, if you invest $100 and earn 10%, you have $110. Next time, 10% is earned on $110, not just the original $100.
So, Warren Buffett. Everyone talks about what he invests in, but Housel says the most important fact is almost always ignored. Buffett started seriously investing at age 10. Of his roughly $84.5 billion net worth, $81.5 billion came after his 65th birthday.
After 65. And here's a thought experiment. If Buffett had started at 30 and retired at 60 with the exact same skill, his net worth would be around $11.9 million, which sounds great, but it's 99.9% less than his actual wealth. The difference isn't talent, it's time.
Housel also uses this beautiful analogy of ice ages. Ice ages don't happen because of one brutally cold winter. They happen because some summers are just slightly cool enough that the previous winter's snow doesn't fully melt. That leftover snow becomes the base for the next year's snow. And slowly, over centuries, the planet gets buried. A little growth, sustained long enough, changes everything.
And the practical takeaway isn't to find the highest returning investment. It's to find a return you can stick with for the longest possible time. Consistency beats brilliance. Longevity is what lets compounding run wild.
Chapter 5 completely reframes how you think about success. Getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skill sets. Getting rich requires optimism and risk-taking. Staying rich requires the opposite: frugality, humility, and the recognition that luck played a role in your success.
Housel tells the story of Jesse Livermore, the greatest stock trader of his era. During the 1929 crash, while everyone else was losing everything, Livermore made the inflation-adjusted equivalent of $3 billion in a single day by betting against the market. Extraordinary! But just 4 years later, overconfidence led him to lose it all. He was a genius at getting wealthy and equally bad at staying wealthy. And then there's Rick Guerin, the forgotten third partner of Buffett and Charlie Munger, just as smart as both of them. But he was in a hurry. He used borrowed money to invest, had no margin of safety, and when the market crashed in the 1970s, he was forced to sell his Berkshire shares to Buffett for under $40 each.
Those shares are now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. Buffett's real secret isn't just what he did, it's what he didn't do. He didn't panic during 14 recessions. He didn't take on dangerous debt. He survived. And survival, Housel says, is the strategy. If financial success could be summarized in one word, it would be that.
The ideal mindset is what Housel calls a barbelled personality, deeply optimistic about the long-term future while being almost paranoid about the short-term obstacles that could knock you out of the game before compounding has a chance to work. Chapter 6 is about tail events, and it completely changes how you think about failure. Walt Disney produced over 400 cartoons by the mid-1930s. Most of them lost money, but then came Snow White. 83 minutes of film, and it paid off every single debt and turned Disney into a legend. One outlier, one tail event. It subsidized everything.
In venture capital, roughly 65% of investments lose money. Only about 0.5% to 1% earn returns of 50 times or more. But that tiny fraction drives nearly 100% of the industry's profits. Even Warren Buffett made most of his money from just 10 stocks out of 400 to 500 he owned over his lifetime.
And Peter Lynch, one of the greatest fund managers in history, said that being terrific in this business meant being right just 6 times out of 10. The best investors in the world are wrong constantly. But when they're right, they pounce on those opportunities fully. And that's what makes the difference.
So don't judge yourself by individual failures. Look at the whole portfolio. Stay in the game long enough for your tail events to happen and make sure no single loss is big enough to take you out before they do.
This might be the most emotionally resonant chapter in the whole book. In Chapter 7, Housel argues that the greatest thing money can buy is not a house, not a car, not a vacation, it's control over your time.
A researcher named Angus Campbell found that having a strong sense of control over your own life is a better predictor of happiness than your salary, your house size, or your job title. And Housel shares something personal here. He worked briefly in investment banking. High pay, interesting work, and he was miserable. Not because of the work itself, but because his time wasn't his own.
And despite being one of the richest nations in history, Americans aren't significantly happier than they were in the 1950s. Housel thinks it's because wealth has been used to buy bigger things, while control over time has quietly slipped away. Knowledge work follows you everywhere. Your phone turns every waking hour into a potential work hour.
A gerontologist named Carl Pillemer interviewed 1,000 elderly Americans to find the most important lessons of life. Not a single one said work harder and buy more things. They talked about friendships, purpose, and unstructured time with family. Money's highest role is buying that back.
Chapters 8 and 9 work beautifully together. Chapter 8, The Man in the Car Paradox. Housel worked as a valet in Los Angeles and drove Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and he realized he never paid attention to the driver. He only noticed the car and imagined himself in it.
That's the paradox. When you buy a luxury car thinking people will admire me, what's actually happening is they're imagining themselves in your seat. You're invisible. The respect you were trying to buy never actually arrives.
And Chapter 9 takes this further. There's a crucial difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich means visible, current income, and spending it. Wealthy means assets you haven't spent, hidden financial resources that give you options and future freedom.
He tells the story of Roger, a guy who drove a Porsche at the valet and looked incredibly successful. Then one day, he showed up in an old Honda. The Porsche had been repossessed. He had been spending a huge portion of his paycheck to look wealthy while having no real margin of safety underneath.
And the trap most people fall into, when they say, I want to be a millionaire, what they actually mean is, I want to spend $1 million. But spending $1 million is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. True wealth is what you don't see. And frugality, the conscious decision to spend less than you earn, is the only real path to it.
Chapter 10 is simple but powerful. The most controllable variable in your financial life is your savings rate. Not your income, not your investment returns. How much you keep out of what you earn.
Housel compares it to the 1970s oil crisis. The world didn't solve the energy shortage by finding more oil, it solved it by becoming more efficient. Wealth is the accumulated leftover after spending. You can build it without a huge income, but you cannot build it without saving.
And here's the part that really lands. Past a certain income level, most extra spending is just ego. It's buying things to signal to others that you're successful. One of the most effective ways to save more isn't to earn more. It's to genuinely care less about what others think.
Save without needing a specific reason. Save as a hedge against life's surprises. Save so you can pounce on opportunities when they appear. Every dollar saved is a point in your future that belongs to you, not to your circumstances, not to an emergency, not to someone else's timeline. In a world where intelligence is no longer a sustainable competitive advantage, that flexibility is one of the most powerful things you can own.
Okay, we've got several more chapters to cover. Let's move through the key ideas.
Chapter 11. Reasonable beats rational. Don't aim for the mathematically perfect investment strategy. Aim for the one you can actually stick with. Even Harry Markowitz, the Nobel Prize-winning father of modern portfolio theory, didn't use his own complex formulas personally. He just split his money 50-50 between stocks and bonds to minimize future regret. He chose reasonable over rational, and that emotional connection to his plan kept him in the game, which in investing is everything.
Chapter 12, Surprise. History is a dangerous map for the future. The most important financial events are the ones nobody predicted. The Great Depression, 9/11, COVID-19, each one was unprecedented when it happened. And this is the failure of imagination. People use past disasters as their worst-case scenario, without realizing the actual worst case will probably be something entirely new. Study history for general wisdom about human behavior, but don't extrapolate specific trends as if they'll continue forever.
Chapter 13. Room for error. Always build a margin of safety into your financial life.
Successful card counters don't know the next card. They just bet heavily when odds favor them and always keep enough reserves to survive a bad streak. That's the model. And there's a critical insight here. There's a huge difference between what you can technically survive on a spreadsheet and what you can emotionally survive in real life. Build a buffer for both.
Bill Gates kept enough cash to pay a full year of Microsoft's payroll, even if the company earned zero revenue. Buffett keeps what he calls more than ample cash, not because it's optimal on paper, but because it lets him sleep at night and pounce on opportunities when others are panicking.
Chapter 14, You'll Change. This chapter is about the end of history illusion, the tendency to clearly see how much you've changed in the past, but completely underestimate how much you'll change in the future. Only 27% of college graduates end up working in a field related to their major. People abandon careers, relationships, and goals as their values evolve. And this is compounding's greatest enemy, because every time you restart, you lose the one thing compounding can never recover: time.
The solution? Avoid financial extremes. Don't design a life around working 80-hour weeks for maximum income or living on nothing to retire at 30. Both of those plans have a high chance of breaking down as you change. Aim for balance. And let go of sunk costs. If a career or a financial plan no longer fits who you are today, abandon it without guilt. The sooner you move on, the sooner compounding can restart in the right direction.
Chapter 15, Nothing's free. Market returns come with a price, and that price is volatility, fear, uncertainty, and the gut-wrenching experience of watching your portfolio drop. The Dow Jones returned roughly 11% annually from 1950 to 2019, but the price was enduring constant corrections and crashes along the way. Even Netflix and Monster Beverage, which returned thousands of percentage points over their lifetimes, spent more than 90% of their existence trading below their previous highs.
Investors who try to avoid that volatility by timing the market or jumping in and out are essentially trying to get the reward without paying the fee. A study of 112 tactical mutual funds found that only 9 outperformed a simple passive portfolio. The mindset shift is this: stop thinking of market downturns as a punishment for doing something wrong. Think of them as the admission fee for something wonderful.
Chapter 16, You and Me. Not everyone in the market is playing the same game as you. A day trader and a 30-year investor can both look at the same stock and make completely rational but opposite decisions. The danger is when long-term investors start copying the behavior of short-term traders without realizing it. Know your game, define your time horizon, and when the market gets noisy, stay in your lane.
Chapter 17. The seduction of pessimism. Bad news always sounds smarter than good news. If someone tells you a stock is about to collapse, you clear your calendar to listen. If someone says it'll grow tenfold, you dismiss them immediately. That's human psychology. We're wired to treat threats as more urgent than opportunities. But pessimistic forecasts almost always fail because they extrapolate current problems in a straight line without accounting for how people and markets adapt.
And Chapter 18, When You'll Believe Anything. Stories are the most powerful force in the economy, more powerful than statistics. The more we want something to be true, the more vulnerable we become to believing narratives that confirm it. Sophisticated investors fell for Madoff's Ponzi scheme, not because they were stupid, but because they had an insatiable desire to believe in the story of steady, guaranteed returns.
And consider this. Physically, the world in 2007 and 2009 was almost identical. Same factories, same technology, same people. But U.S. households were $16 trillion poorer in 2009. The only thing that changed was the story we told ourselves. That narrative shift alone caused real, catastrophic damage. Stories are not soft. They are the most powerful and most volatile force in finance. And consider this. Physically, the world in 2007 and 2009 was almost identical. Same factories, same technology, same people. But U.S. households were $16 trillion poorer in 2009. The only thing that changed was the story we told ourselves. That narrative shift alone caused real, catastrophic damage. Stories are not soft. They are the most powerful and most volatile force in finance.
The final 2 chapters bring everything together. Chapter 19 is Housel's summary, and the core message is there is no single right answer in finance. The right answer is the one that works for you, given your goals, your psychology, and your life.
Acknowledge luck and risk. Build wealth by suppressing ego spending. Use the sleep test. If a financial decision keeps you up at night, it's probably not right for you, regardless of what the math says. Let compounding work. Expect to be wrong often, and make sure being wrong doesn't destroy you.
And in Chapter 20, Housel gets wonderfully personal. His primary goal isn't to be rich, it's to be independent, to wake up every day and choose how he spends his time. He and his wife made a deliberate decision to practice frugality, not by living poorly, but by refusing to let their lifestyle inflate with every income increase. Every raise went into their independence fund instead of their spending.
He paid off his mortgage even though the math said invest that cash. He keeps 20% of his assets in cash, which is indefensible on paper, but it's his personal margin of safety, his oxygen of independence. It means he can never be forced to sell investments at the wrong time.
He invests only in low-cost index funds through dollar-cost averaging. No stock picking, no chasing tips, just patience, consistency, and trust in compounding over decades.
And his 3 pillars? A high savings rate, patience, and optimism in the long-term future. He built a financial life designed to let him sleep at night. And maybe, after everything we've discussed today, that's the most important financial goal of all.
Okay, now it's time for our useful language breakdown. You've already heard these words and expressions used naturally throughout our conversation. Now let's look at each one closely so you can actually use them yourself.
These are B2 to C1 level items, great for IELTS, professional contexts, or just sounding more precise and fluent. Let's go.
Number 1, to wing it, a phrasal verb. Definition, to do something without preparation, to improvise as you go. Example, most young investors are winging it because nobody ever really taught them how this stuff works. When to use it? Informal to semi-formal. It has an honest, self-aware tone, like admitting you're figuring things out without a clear plan.
Number 2, insatiable, an adjective. Definition, impossible to satisfy, always wanting more no matter how much you already have. Example, his insatiable appetite for status led him to spend far beyond his means. When to use it? Carries a slightly negative connotation, suggesting the desire is excessive and ultimately self-destructive. Great for essays and formal discussions.
Number 3, frugality, a noun. Definition, the quality of being careful and intentional with money, avoiding unnecessary spending. Example, it wasn't his salary that made him wealthy. It was his frugality over 30 years. When to use it? More positive than cheapness. Frugality implies wisdom and discipline, not stinginess.
Number 4, to move the goalposts. Idiom. Definition, to keep raising your expectations so that satisfaction always stays just out of reach. Example, every time she hit a new income milestone, she moved the goalposts, and the happiness she expected never came. When to use it? Very common in business and everyday English. Use it when someone keeps changing the bar, either for themselves or unfairly for others.
Number 5, a margin of safety, an expression. Definition, a financial or practical buffer that protects you when things don't go according to plan. Example, always build a margin of safety. Assume things will cost more and take longer than you expect. When to use it? Originally from engineering and investing, now used broadly in any professional or analytical context involving risk.
Number 6, compounding, a noun. Definition, the process by which growth builds on itself. Gains generate further gains, creating exponential results over time. Example, the earlier you start saving, the more time compounding has to work in your favor. When to use it? Essential vocabulary for finance and investing. Also used metaphorically, the compounding effect of good habits.
Number 7, to extrapolate, a verb. Definition, to extend current trends or data into the future, sometimes beyond what the evidence actually supports. Example, it's dangerous to extrapolate from a few good years in the market and assume it will always be that way. When to use it? Very useful in academic writing and analytical discussions. Implies someone is drawing conclusions that go beyond what's strictly proven. Number 9, a sunk cost, an expression. Definition, money, time, or effort already spent that cannot be recovered, and that therefore shouldn't control future decisions. The past couldn't be undone, only the future could. When to use it? Critical in business and decision-making. The sunk cost fallacy is when people continue something only because of past investment, even when moving on would be wiser.
And number 10, to pounce on an opportunity, an idiomatic expression. Definition, to act quickly and decisively the moment a good opportunity presents itself. Example, having cash reserves means you can pounce on investment opportunities when others are being forced to sell. When to use it? Pounce suggests speed and decisiveness, like a cat leaping at prey. Use it in professional or informal contexts when describing someone who seizes a chance without hesitation.
Yeah, and the best part, you didn't just hear these words explained today, you heard them used naturally in context throughout the whole conversation.
And we have a free resource waiting for you in the description, a vocabulary worksheet with all 10 of today's items, definitions, examples, and fill-in-the-blank practice exercises so you can test yourself.
There's also a speaking and writing practice section with prompts. These exercises are designed to help you use the language actively, not just recognize it, because that's what real fluency looks like. Go check the description, click the link, and download your free worksheet.
If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people find LexiMind. And if you have a book you'd love us to cover next, drop it in the comments. We read every single one.
And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community, where every episode makes you smarter and more fluent. See you next episode on LexiMind.